And now it's time to check in on how Trump's America is faring in American Renaissance. Joining us now is Natalie Winters, co-host of Steve Bannon's War Room and our very own White House correspondent. Natalie, great to see you. What an amazing time you must be having there in the press room. It's unbelievable. It's incredible. But listen, I wanted to show you, I don't know about you, I remember Sesame Street as a kid, but it certainly didn't, and I'm sure you do, didn't look much like this, but apparently the American government's been paying for this. Have a quick look.
انتظري يا شمس أنا أمسك بالمكنسة.
So, Natalie, that's just one of the sillier things, but the obscene waste of taxpayers' money. Tell us about it. How are Americans absolutely stunned by what has been revealed about USAID?
To be fair, I think Iraqi Sesame Street's probably better than most of what we saw going on at the Grammys. But this has really been, I think, not just a Renaissance type week, but a revolutionary week for the American people. I think, frankly, confirming something that we've all known, which is that USAID and a lot of these foreign granting agencies, that their mission to so-called, advance the United States footprint or soft power abroad is really just a racket. It's corruption. It's how this town, this swamp, has gotten so rich off of basically untraceable, untrackable, and unauditable aid for just really asinine projects like I think you just witnessed and highlighted there. But I think there's also something more nefarious that this week has shown us, which is that part of the design of these agencies, most, I think, notably USAID, that's the Agency for International Development, that it's a systemic problem whereby they don't want the transparency, they don't want the audits, they don't want the American people to actually know what they're subsidizing with their taxpayer dollars. And certainly a lot of it fits into the paradigm of the waste, fraud, and abuse like you're highlighting. But there's also a more nefarious angle too, where we were talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being weaponized, not just in the gender culture war stuff to turn your kids trans, probably in Australia too, but really in the censorship industrial complex. There's a lot, it's a nest of vipers, right? There's a lot of issues here.
Now, great news. On this show, and I know you guys have long been talking about how ridiculous and wrong, basically wrong it was that men could play in girls' and women's sports by simply identifying. I've been fighting this fight for a long time. Many women in Australia, very brave women, have stood up against the woke lunacy to fight against us and had lots of problems in doing so. Donald Trump's come to the rescue again, and here he was in the White House. I'll play a little bit of the clip, Natalie, of him yesterday, basically saying, that's it, no more men in women's sports. Have a look.
Female athletes have been forced onto the front lines, and men claiming to be girls have stolen more than 3,500 victories. That's a lot. And invaded more than 11,000 competitions designed for women.
And then, Natalie, wonderful pictures of Trump surrounded by all these young girls and athletes, all rushing forward to sit around him as he signed, and he did a beautiful signature. He called it a number 10. Very funny stuff. But what was your take on it? And do the women of America understand how critical this has been?
Yeah, I was honored to be there that day. I saw all the cute young girls dressed up in their fun outfits, just oozing with happiness and pride and joy that President Trump really wasn't doing anything all that radical, right? Just restoring common sense to the world and to women's sports. I think it represents him actually putting the nuclear family first, the idea that biological women are women and shouldn't have to compete or get beat up by men in whatever sport they may be choosing to play. But I think that there's a lot of excitement over this issue. And here in the United States, when you talk about the culture wars, when you talk about what you've really seen, I think, buttress and be behind the shift between a lot of people who used to call themselves Democrats, but then became sort of disaffected with just the pure sheer madness and radicalness of the Democratic Party. A lot of the issues that sort of catalyzed that shift go back to issues like men and women's sports, like the radical indoctrination in schools. So it's a very salient issue for Republicans politically, and the polls that continue to come out, the data shows that it's only growing in terms of, I think, both importance and popularity, but just from the sense of what is correct and ethical and moral, and I think important to uphold Western societal civilizational values, the idea that gender and gender roles and traditionalism and the nuclear family matters. It's a very strong and important day for that. Of course, we need the Senate, we need Congress to do their job and make this so this isn't just an executive order that the next radical Biden-esque president could just overturn with a stroke of a pen. But they're really being pushed hard to do that, and I think that they will.